12 essential insights for emotional sobriety. I believe that this is going to be a definitive work in terms of defining emotional sobriety and laying out a path to achieve it. If you're stuck in recovery, or if you want to take the next step in your recovery, please read my book. So tonight we are on step 8, right? Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Now, I always like to kind of look at what's happened so far in the first 7 steps, because the steps are interdependent, right? They create this momentum as we're going through it. And the momentum has now led us to taking a very, very specific action. And I just want to review what happened in step 6 and 7, right? In step 6 and 7, we really sat with our character defaults. I think it was Glenn talked about changing that term from character defect to character default, that we're taking a look at our character defaults. I like to think of them as looking at the psychological adaptations that we made in life to deal with whatever was going on at the time, with whatever resources were available to us at the time. My mentor, Dr. Kempler, called it the psychological adaptation syndrome, is that we try to cope the best way we can with whatever is going on at that moment in our life and with whatever resources are available. And they're never enough. I mean, they're never enough so that our response to whatever has been going on in our life is always going to be compromised. And so that means that our behavior is going to be compromised later on in our life as well. So we kind of took a look at this in step 6 and 7. And in 7, we got ready. We were really ready to have this, to really develop the best possible attitude and behaviors we could have towards our life. That's what we were doing in steps 6 and 7, really cultivating this desire, this interest in discovering new possibilities for ourselves, and as possibilities that are going to help us show up in a much better way. So we were ready for that. We asked for that. That's what step 7 is. Humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. Now, I think one of the wonderful things about the steps, in addition to how they create this charge and discharge that we've talked about many times, there's also lessons taking place at all kinds of different levels. What is happening is that for most of us, maybe for all of us, that we really lived our life based on wanting to feel comfortable. Many people talk about that. In our culture, there's this pain phobia. We avoid being uncomfortable. We avoid pain. We want to run away from it as quick as possible. Now, that's functional. If you stick your hand on a hot stove, it's good to be uncomfortable and pull your hand off that stove. But when that comes to other behavior in terms of us growing ourselves psychologically and spiritually, we know that pain is the touchstone to our spiritual progress. And so our avoidance of pain has kept us immature. We've avoided going through the hell gates of suffering, as Fritz Perls said. But it is the only way that we can grow ourselves in the way that we're talking about in terms of emotional sobriety is to face some of the discomfort in our life that we've avoided, to face the things that we've been afraid to face and confront in our lives, is to undo this idea that my life is about being comfortable all the time. It's learning how to embrace that discomfort in the service of our growth and development. And that's the lesson that we're being given here. We're being told that that old attitude, that whole old idea about avoid discomfort at all cost, you know, avoid, 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 is the name of the game. And we're reversing that. We're saying here, you are going to deliberately make a list of people you've harmed, and you're going to become willing to sit and be uncomfortable and face those people and talk to them about what you've done wrong and make amends to them. That's the quest we're on. Now, the thing about avoidance is it's so damn effective. It really is. It's incredibly powerful, because as soon as you avoid something that is making you uncomfortable or anxious, the reinforcement power of that avoidant behavior is incredible. It's incredible, and it takes a concerted effort to really turn it around and to now put yourself in a position of discomfort. Now, so that's one of the things that's happening here. We're turning around this avoidance of pain, of discomfort. We're now developing an attitude that I'm going to embrace my pain and my discomfort in the service of my growth. So we develop, I believe, kind of an attitude that helps us endure pain and suffering because of the meaning that it's going to bring to our life. And that becomes a very important shift in our consciousness to embrace that. Now, when we're making a list of all persons we had harmed, what are we focusing on? What are we looking at? And, if you go into the read at 12 and 12, there's a list of different areas that we need to pay attention to. And I think all those are very important. But one of the things that Bill doesn't raise in the 12 and 12 that I want to raise tonight is how we have put our unreasonable expectations on other people and expected them to live up to our demands. So I think that that's an important thing. As we sit down and look at how we've harmed others, we need to put on this lens that helps us see and identify our unenforceable rules and how those have harmed other people in our life. How we've expected people to live up to our expectations without a consideration of whether or not that's something they're interested in. And if, you guys were as good at this as I am, you made people feel awfully bad about themselves when they didn't live up to your expectations, like they had committed the most heinous crime in the world. And that was how good I became at manipulating other people to do what I wanted them to do. I made it seem like that they were violating one of the 10 commandments. Thou shalt not hurt Dr. Berger. Oh my God, where was that written? I don't think Moses read that one off the tablet that he discovered. But that's the kind of nonsense that I had in my life. And that still shows up. I mean, and we'll get to that. That's step 10 work, right? That still shows up in my life today. Thank God, not as much as it did earlier on. So this becomes a very, very important thing for us to now look at how we've harmed other people from the perspective of this idea that I want to see how my unenforceable rules have shown up in how they have damaged my relationships with those people I care about, and even others. I mean, I've gotten several emails from people that says, my God, I just see how I put these unreasonable expectations on people I work with as well. It's not just limited to my family. My coworkers get it all the time as well from me. God, if they don't do what I think that they should do, now I start judging them. I start, criticizing them and making them feel bad, like that they've really, really done something terribly wrong. And it's made my life hell. This is somebody that just recently sent me a message. They said, my God, there's I've got this reputation in my company that nobody wants to work with me because I'm impossible. Now I understand why. I mean, So this is, I think, an incredibly important movement. If we are aiming at developing the best possible attitude towards our life, it means that I have no business putting my expectations on how I think you're supposed to be on you. I can put whatever expectations on me and take a look at them and decide if I want to live up to them or not. And there's nothing wrong with me asking you for what I want from you. But you see, the difference between me making a request and making a demand is how I respond when you don't cooperate. If I make a request and say, I'd really like this, this really has some meaning to me, then if you don't do it, I'm going to be disappointed. It's not going to damage our relationship. I'll feel bad about it. I'll appreciate that you were honest with me. That's a very important thing. When you turn to somebody that you love for what you want, or somebody that you care about for what you want, and it's not available, you appreciate what is. So I appreciate the honesty. You can't give that to me at this time. Fine. I'm glad you were able to say it and that you just didn't do it and then resent me later because you did something you didn't want to do. I don't want to get into that whole thing. So I appreciate that you said no to me. But if it's a demand, then my response is not just to feel my disappointment. It's now I turn it into this whole big thing. I become incredibly dramatic about it. Oh my God, how could you? You are not a very thoughtful person. Look at what I've done for you. I just love this when I hear people say, I'm such a generous person. I don't understand why these other people don't respond after I've done so much for them. Well, wait a minute. There's all kinds of strings attached to that generosity. That's not being generous. That's a quid pro quo. I'll do this for you if you do that for me. But the problem is we never let people read that small ink on the contract. So that's what we're up to. That's what we're up to as we start this work with step number 8. It's a very important step in our development to be able to see how our unenforceable rules have impacted our lives and impacted our relationships. And we'll be exploring this more and more over the next few weeks. But at this point, I think that I'll go ahead and turn this over to Tom and Roger, and let's hear what they have to say about step 8.
Roger. Where's Roger?
Roger's muted.
So I was gonna tag him. You're it.
I'm unmuted. Alan, what would I do without you to remind me that I'm still muted? Hey, Tom. Hey, Alan. Hello, everybody. So, what do you think? You want to roll with that to start with, Tom?
No, you always do that to me. I'm doing it to you tonight.
Now
you go first. You give me. It gives me more information. See, now I have more to work with. I get more time to write my paper.
You're not looking for information. You're looking for ammunition, Tom. It's a different. No. All right.
Well, now these guys need some couples counseling. So you guys watch what happens in a relationship in terms of negotiation.
Honey, the Roger Tom honeymoon is over.
It's not for me. Okay. No. So a couple of things come to mind, Al. I really appreciate a lot about what you shared. One of the things I face in my own life a lot, because I love to avoid discomfort as much as the next person. But it took me a while to understand when I was younger that the same part of me that's so invested in avoiding discomfort and avoiding facing pain, that wants to numb myself or shut myself down or avoid. It took me a long time to understand, and I still forget pretty regularly, that when I'm shutting down the negative side of my emotional slate, my anxiety, my anger and resentment, my grief and sadness, when I do that, I'm not aware of it, but I'm also shutting down the positive side of my emotional slate. The way I like to say it to people is, when I'm really hit hard with grief, if I can't surrender to that and I can't let myself cry, I'm also not going to be able to let myself laugh very deeply in my life. Mm-hmm. And if I've closed myself off to my fear and, make sure nobody comes close to me, I'm going to have a lot of trouble opening up to other people in trust. And I still struggle with that every day. In a lot of ways, I'd much rather give than be given to, give than receive, because, it's a good experience to give. I love doing that, but it's also a safer experience. I feel more in control when I'm the giver than when I'm the receiver. And I know a lot of us struggle with that, right? Because we feel like we can't handle the pain of disappointment, like Dr. Berger was talking about. So it's a really powerful idea to me that the way our emotions work, if I've tightened up my breathing and tightened up my jaw and other areas of my body to hold against my sadness and my anger and my fear, I've also tightened up and shut down my capacity for love. Now, there is a big caveat here, which obviously the destructive expression of anger or rage can do much more harm than good. So I am talking about appropriate expression. There's a pretty wide arena I think that can contain, but I am talking about constructive expression, more mature adult level expression of my feelings. The other thing that I wanted to comment on, Al, and I lose track of this on a regular basis in my life today, but when I'm really attached to something I want, right, when it really matters to me, that's when I start to move from request mode to demand mode. And it's pretty automatic to the extent that I'm invested in getting something that I want or having something happen that I want. I seamlessly transition from plenty of room for the other person to say no if they need to say no, realizing if I care about them at all, I want to support their integrity. I want to say that again. If I really care about them and I'm coming from love rather than unhealthy dependency or unhealthy need, I want to help them protect their integrity. I want them to be true to themselves. But when I'm really attached to something I want, man, especially at an emotional level, that's when it can shift to demand. And what I lose track of, when I say to that person, I'm usually not going to be so, upfront as to say these actual words, but, if you really loved me, you would, right? What I don't realize in that moment is I am not doing for them exactly what I'm demanding they do for me. Think about that for a moment. When I put myself in a position of making demands, put me first. Am I doing that with the person I'm making that demand of? No way. Not even close. And so that's helped quite a few people that I know and that I've worked with. If they really have trouble saying no, if they really have trouble standing up for themselves, if they really have trouble setting limits or boundaries, it's helped me sometimes and others to find a way to be able to do that, to go like, wait a second, you're not giving me right now what you're demanding from me. I don't have to go along with this. I'm going to follow your lead. I'm going to tell you what I really want. Okay, what I really think. So those are a couple of thoughts that I have. Thank you, Al.
Thanks, Rod. Just right on. We don't ever think about it that way, and I've been so aware of that at times. Is that what I'm expecting the other person to do is to consider my request, my feelings, but there is no consideration for their feelings, for what they want and how they feel about things. So that's such an important consideration in this. Thank you.
That brings up to a whole other, another angle on looking at these expectations too, because and that's just looking through the lens of double standard. It's like, how it's even to put that question into our mix, to be able to say, in what way am I operating out of a double standard right now? Because that's exactly what that is. And to heal the double standard is to make all the difference in the world. It's, I love that. And it's like, First thing I wrote down when Roger, while you were talking, was you can't shut down a la carte. It's like, but that's what we try to do. That's a really great point. And we want to selectively do no to this, no to this, no to this. But it's like it, and I know that from absolutely my own history. I can tell stories of other people, but I got plenty of my own that you cannot do that. And I come from a long line of shutter downers and disowners and just shutter outers and everything else. Just walls everywhere you could possibly look. And that, which brings me to the word that I was reading back through step 8 and the 12 and 12 to get ready for tonight. And noticed the word avoidance. And then Alan, you started talking, and that's the word that you said several times there. That was and you had a great little nutshell. That's just avoidance is so damn effective. It's like, now there's a statement. My without even thinking about any content, I felt that affirmation in my affirmation to that statement. Yes, it is. It's very effective. But and that goes back to you can't do it a la carte though. It's like it's very effective, but it's gonna serve you both ways, whether you like it or not. And I never really thought of step 8, and this is one of the things I'm finding with every one of these steps as we go through this, and as I listen to Alan, you talk, and now with Roger, and just thinking about it differently is I'm seeing new things in each step, and I love the idea that we can go back again and again and again and find something new all the time. And I never thought about step 8 about being. I knew it was an action step. I knew we were stepping out into the world. It's like the end of the first paragraph says this powerful statement. We may, newfound knowledge of ourselves, we may develop the best possible relations with every human being we know. I mean, God, and it doesn't say perfect. It just says the best possible. It's such a powerful statement. And something that huge in me, I can say, and I think as in human beings, is going to naturally set off our avoidance reflexes. It's like duck and cover, man. It's like that sounds really wonderful. I think I'll be over here, and I'll get back with you all in a little while. And one of my and anybody who knows me knows that one of my very great talents has to do with avoidance, and it is procrastination. It's like it is. If there's a life theme I'm working on in this life, it is about dealing with procrastination, and it is a powerful way to avoid. And I'm better, but still, like you say, Roger, I'm still working on it. The other thing I'm looking here at my book because I also read another phrase in here, another sentence that just made me laugh out loud, and I had not thought of it before. This reopening of emotional wounds, some old, some perhaps forgotten, and some still painfully festering, will first look like. I think I only see this now that I'm an old guy, but will first look like a purposeless and pointless piece of surgery. It's like I'm thinking about all the stories about pointless and purposeless surgery I've known people to go through. It's like, and it is the opposite of that. It is purposeful. This, and I think, and where I want to come to kind of wrap up my thoughts for this about today is the other word that you said, Alan, that popped out at me was back to one of our favorite words, which is meaning. And it's also about purpose. It's like, so we ask ourselves when we're trying to overcoming my procrastination to avoid. And actually I realized that step 8 is just, we're going back into doing inventory again. That's the thing. Once we're here in the practice of the program, we're not ever finished with inventory. It's an ongoing process. And it's like, but reading the 12 and 12, it's coming back, looking at yourself again, being more, looking at not only the specifics, but also the broader generalizations you can get from that. And the other piece it talks about is very fast in the beginning of the 12 and 12 is that this is about, for us, for the people working the step, forgiveness. You know,
Mm.
the idea is this is, you know, there's almost, it's just a given as I read back through this, that what we're doing with all the people, they're acknowledging, Bill's acknowledging that, yeah, these people that we hurt may have hurt us, but it's like, that's not the point of the step. That's not it. Our job is, you know, our job, if we're working this step sincerely, is to begin with forgiveness, you know, and otherwise we would be working in a double standard. So that, but the last point would be just that it's not pain. You know, we avoid pain. And another thing you said, Alan, avoidance of pain has kept us immature. Amen. And I've also known people and been somebody who has also unconsciously pursued pain for its own sake, or because I believed I deserved it, or that kind of thing. This is pain. This is the pursuit of pain, it's not pursuit of pain, but it's pursuit of something that we know is going to be uncomfortable. It's going to bring about pain, but it's for a reason. It's for a purpose, and it's for our personal growth. And that's the most important part of it for me.
Well, I just love what both of you have said, and you just really made my point. It's like we're cutting into a piece of tiramisu, right? And if we're finding out there's so many layers to this, right? There's so many different dimensions. Like you said, it's really freeing us from some of the shackles that have held us in our life, is what you're saying. Because look, emotional sobriety, we can think of that synonymously with emotional freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's one of what we're really pursuing here is to be free. You know, what you're also saying, Roger, is that what we're cultivating in this step is at another level is having an awareness that is not only focused on ourselves, but also includes the other person. And so our awareness is being expanded at the same time, and there's going to be no maturity without an expanded sense of awareness of not only what's going on for us, but what's going on for the other person, and being aware of them and how our behavior is impacting them. And then what you were saying, Tom, too, is this thing about what did you call it? The way Gerald Zuck defines it, he calls it silence-inducing strategies, how we would shut people down if they weren't saying what we wanted them to say, right? I mean, he said that, man, this is a hallmark of a dysfunctional relationship, is that we silence the other person if they're not doing what we want them to do with a variety of different techniques.
I know how I do it, and you know how I do it too. I just keep talking. It's like there's no room. I leave if I'm doing that. I leave no room, and sometimes I may know I'm doing that. Other times I may look back with a big whoop. So okay, that's, you know, the best way not to get you to say something that's going to upset me is not let you speak.
That's right. So that's what's happening with this thing. We're looking at this at all different levels. One of the things that it's important for us to think about in our recovery is our relationship to our emotions. I know that depending on the way we're raised, certain feelings and certain emotions are going to be okay. They're going to be acceptable. And those that aren't are going to be pushed aside and disowned. Well, recovery is about recovering your lost true self. See, it's about achieving wholeness again. Because when I fragment myself, and when you fragmented yourself, you can't function well in life. You can't cope effectively with life. We need all of us to show up to be able to deal well with life. Well, emotional sobriety is about discovering new possibilities. Recovery is about recovering our lost true self and discovering new possibilities.